All right, welcome everyone. And today we are very fortunate. We are getting the opportunity to visit with Dr. Greg Rasmussen, who will be sharing with us all of the expertise he has around the African painted dog. Dr. Rasmussen, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be talking to you all.
We're honored to have you with us here today. And we're in Mrs. Z's class, who is at North High School. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. All right. Dr. Rasmussen, why don't you introduce yourself and why you love the African painted dog?
Okay, well, my name is Dr. Greg Rasmussen. I'm a wildlife biologist. I've been working with the painted dog for some 38 years, and as you can see on the screen, they're very unique canid that no close relative of the domestic dog or the wolf. So they're uniquely social. I'm going to give a short presentation today, and I'm hoping that everyone's going to come forward with lots of questions and answer questions for Q&A. So painted dog, they're unique canid, no close relatives. I started studying them, as I said, 38 years ago. And as you can see, they've got those enormous ears. No two dogs have the same coat pattern, and that is why they're called a painted dog. And not a true dog, they're not close relatives of the wolf or the jackals. And because they're high-speed runners, over 6 million years, they've lost their dew claws. And when you've got to run, a dew claw gets in the way. Everyone always asks me, can we interbreed wolves with painted dogs? The answer is no, definite no. It's a bit like, can we hybridize with chimps and gorillas and baboons? No, we can't. That's about the easiest way of saying it. I'm going to share with you a little bit about their social system today, which is what really struck me about them. But why do we call them painted? Well, no two are the same. As you can see, this is one of our ID files. We keep an identity file on every single painted dog. We get to know them by their coat pattern. And their coat pattern is like a signature, like a barcode, which works for us amazingly. The scientific name for the painted dog is Lycaon pictus, the painted wolf-like animal. No surprises, they're not called painted for nothing. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey from early days when I was also painted, working, sharing what I'd learned about painted dogs, as I'm going to do with you today. So what do you see about them? There's a really painted one in the front there. And those big ears. So they're a unique species. And they're totally well adapted for the job that they do, which is high-speed running. But those big ears, everyone says, why have painted dogs got big ears? Well, they get big ears, for losing heat, but not quite in the same way that an elephant loses heat by convection. They lose heat when they're running. They keep those big flappy ears forward, and the airflow, the ears act as a wind funnel and catch the air and drive it over the center of the skull. Keep the brain cool, because when you're running, your body may go into high body temperatures, but the one organ that has to stay cool is the brain. Where can I see the next slide? So social. That was the main thing that when I first saw my first painted dogs. The unique social nature. And in fact, when I started 38 years ago, all we knew about the painted dog that was true was that they lived in packs and they ate meat. And what we didn't know about their social system was how social they were. And the thing is, pack is very important to painted dogs, as I'm going to share with you. And in fact, when I was studying my very first pack, there was one dog was injured by a lion, and the next day I get in there, I see this dog was as good as dead. The dog's name was Olna, and I called the vet, radioed the vet, and said to the vet, I said, look, there's a dog being mauled. He looks as good as dead. And the vet said, 6 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock in the evening, what can I do? I said, not a lot. I just need emotional support, I think. And So he said, well, tomorrow when you go back early in the morning about 4 or 5 o'clock, and if the dog's still there and breathing, I can probably make it. Try and if there's anything I can do. So I got back at 5 in the morning. There was no sign of the dog, but there was a drag mark. He looked like a sack of potatoes had been dragged along the ground. And clearly, in my mind, a scavenger had taken the carcass away to feed on. The pack was already somewhere else. Obviously disheartened, I found the pack, which was about 10 miles away already. Painted dogs have got enormous territories. They move something like 500 square miles is their average territory of a single pack of painted dogs. And they were there, and I was like, continued to follow their hunts and follow their movements, because I used to follow them for up to 28 days a month. And suddenly one dog, whose name was Circus, kept disappearing somewhere. And I'm like, where are you going? And I'm like, it was about 9:30 in the morning when Circus would go somewhere and come back around 12. And I'm like, where are you going? So after 2 or 3, 4 days, I found a tracker, and I said, look, let's find out where he's going. And the pair of us tracked for about 6 or 7 hours until we finally get to where Circus was going. And I couldn't believe my eyes. There, in a thick, dragged into a thicket, close to where he was mauled, was his brother Olner. So he'd been going every single day to look after his brother Olner, and that was the first case ever of a wild species taking care of the sick and the weak. And he did this every single day for 3 months, and this is the picture of Olner after the 3 months. And look at that wound there. I mean, that looks like it. Imagine what it looked like 3 months ago. And this is just to prove to you that Olner did recover. That's the picture of Olner after 6 months. And the unique thing about Olner, of course, he had little white spots on him, and that was how easy it was to tell. What do painted dogs eat? Well, they're a predator like the wolf. They were also persecuted like the wolf, and they were slaughtered in their hundreds of thousands until they were nearly extinct in Africa. And they eat anything from a large antelope to smaller antelope, and they work as a team to feed. And one of the things that's unique about the painted dogs, unlike lions that say, get out, I'm first, they share all the food absolutely equitably. So, and then if one dog, I used to have a dog, I used to call him Magellan, who used to be lost on the hunt. And he'd arrive and all the others have full bellies and he had nothing in his belly. And he'd go up and say, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm late again. And they'd all share their food with him. That said a lot about the painted dog. There were stories about them. People used to make up stories in order to justify the slaughter. It was like the wolf, they were labeled the big bad painted dog. They were labeled savage, ruthless killers. And we target animals with human attributes that are completely wrong. There's nothing savage and ruthless about the painted dog. In fact, they're the most sophisticated predator, and they're one of the most social animals on this planet. Just to share with you how efficient they are when they work as a team, this is what's left of a prey animal after 3 minutes. That would have been a 120-pound animal that they've reduced to nothing in 3 minutes, and that includes the killing time. So killing obviously is something that's not very pleasant to some, but of course it's nature. We also eat meat. We have to remember that. And but they do that to eat it so fast, and the reason they eat it so quickly is that lions and hyenas will come and steal their food. It's called kleptoparasitism, which is loss of prey by theft. I think we all know in school we used to call kids who stole our pencils and pens kleptomaniacs. That's where the name comes from. I'm going to share a little bit about the painted dog and the difference between a painted dog and a wolf, just very quickly. You can see there the painted dogs are well adapted to the job they do. This is the skull of a wolf. You can see there's very little cranial volume, and it's got a long, narrow skull. And here's a picture of the painted dog skull. You can see it's short. And I've actually got one in my hand here. Well, not the real skull in my hand. And you can see something very noticeable about the painted dog here. There's a big bulbous brain case, but the painted dog's brain volume is about 1.5 times that of a wolf. And like humans, they need a big brain because they're social, highly social. In fact, they're uniquely social, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And they evolved that brain case as they became more and more social. They needed that brain case, and they also needed a special tooth that's here, which I can point it out. There's a special tooth here on the skull. I don't know if we can see that, and that tooth is one of the most efficient teeth on the planet for wild canids. Every other canid, well, there's only one or two other canid species that have it, and it isn't the wolf. And that tooth enables them to cut bone very fast and cut meat very quickly, which means they don't need, as you can see on the wolf, they don't need the big brain, the big muscle mass on what we call the masseter muscles. So this area here used to be muscle, now it's brain, and the painted dog 6 million years ago. And that enabled them with a brain and a language. They also have a language. And in fact, there's a fun story that I can tell you about them. When I first studied them, I didn't realize quite how sophisticated they were as a species. So every single day, you obviously every pack breeds, and I used to think, well, they're so social. Let me try playing their distress call. And the distress call of a painted dog is a hoot call. And I used to think to myself, so when one member's injured or lost on a hunt, they give that who call, HOO. And I used to think I could play the who call to bring the dogs in. You hear about researchers trying to do playbacks. So I would play the who call. I used to have this big boom box on the top of my Land Rover. Looked a bit like an ice cream van going around. Woo, woo! And I did thousands and thousands of miles, and the dogs never came anywhere near my vehicle. And I thought, well, maybe they're out of range. And then one day I saw a pack of dogs, and I'm like, right, put all my gubbins up there onto the roof, and went, woo, woo, with the who call. It wasn't me voicing it, it was the real one, a recording, obviously. And one dog lifted his ear, and I'm like, that's not very encouraging. So then I had a young graduate student who's been looking for an odd PhD project. And I said, I've got your PhD project, let's study the who call. And she said, I can't do a PhD on a who call. I said, well, it's got to be interesting. I said, they don't respond, so why they're using it if they take no notice of it? It's got to be fascinating. Anyway, she agreed. And it turned out it was the most fascinating call, because the who call is basically a woo, 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 woo. And at the end, there was always something like, those of us that can't sing, at the end you run out of air, and that's what it sounded like. Well, when she analyzed the calls with the sonograms, she found out that every single dog had its own unique signature on the back of the call. So the main call was like, help, help, I'm in trouble. And then the last bit was, Greg, Fred. So, of course, I knew then immediately why it didn't work when I played it back to them. Because if I was playing another pack, they're like, I don't care, it's not, we haven't lost one of our members. And, of course, if I was playing one of their members, they'd be looking at me going, who the hell are you, you idiot? Who's that idiot playing the call of Fred, who's sat next to me quite comfortable, thank you very much. So as you're beginning to gather, the most critical thing about painted dogs is the teamwork. And when you think about any good teams need numbers. You don't catch the 500-pound kudu bull with one animal on your own. You don't defend your pack with just two individuals, because otherwise the pups will die. You need a team. And the painted dog teams are no different to any sports team. They have an optimal pack numbers, pack size. So like in rugby football, it's 15, and in ice hockey, it's 6. And in painted dog society, 6 adult individuals is the absolute minimum they have to have. Anything between 6 and 12 adult and yearlings is what they need, plus all their pups for the year. So it's a bit like an ice hockey team. If they're 6 and one's given a penalty, you can imagine very quickly the pack's unsuccessful. The hunting success, like in the game, scoring success goes down the toilet. So survival of these pups is really critical. And so is their teamwork. Now, these pups are very, very unique. But these pups you're looking at now suckling, they're just 2 weeks old already. They've grown from almost like a little, looks like a little rat or mouse or something. And then they grow very quickly. And by 3 weeks, they're already weaning. And those pups there you're seeing in the picture are right at the cusp of being weaned. This is a sort of picture you never get just by trying to stand at the den, because if you go to the den, of course, the animals disappear in the background and don't exhibit natural behavior. So these pups here, I call it meat or milk. It's one of my favorite shots from the camera traps, where the mother's suckling and then the adult, she signals somehow to the adults that it's time to start helping her wean the pups. And the rest of the adults in the pack regurgitate small parcels of meat and encourage one or two to leave the teat. And as you can see there, one little smarty started it. Well, within 2 or 3 days, they're all at it. And there's mother gets a break, and then she can go continue hunting. Now, one of the problems, of course, just looking at this scene, this is a very natural scene that you get when we're doing camera traps. But the problem is that we also get tourism and film crews, and some researchers go to dens because the pups don't get fed properly. These pups, now here's a bit of data. These pups need to eat every 3 hours to grow properly, because by 12 weeks old, these pups have to join the pack in what we call going nomadic, which then means that every single day they're in a different place, and the cost of hunting goes down. And if they get disturbed, they only get 6 or 8 meals a day. They get maybe 2 or 3, because the tourists were to arrive when this was happening. The pups wouldn't get fed for another 4 hours. And by 12 weeks old, the pups have got to have long legs. They're really sort of quite big, and they'll have to be long-legged by that age and have grown like mushrooms, because at 12 weeks old, they'll often do 5 to 10 miles a day. It's an incredible journey. Now, here's a typical scene. The pups, they're all ready now for regurgitated food. The picture of the dog on the left there, it's not sticking its tongue out. The food is actually just about to be delivered. And these pups are all going for their share. But what's interesting about painted dogs is they've got a social system that is so unique, where these pups already are starting to form bonds and observe each other, so that they know begin to know which dog in later life they're going to follow. And so it's not a contest for leadership. They all, as a group, look at the males pups will look at the other male pups, and they'll go, Circus, he's the bright one. That dog there, he stands above the rest. He's the one that he's got the leadership skills. And it's normally, in every litter, there'll be a male and a female that's just different. When anyone who's had domestic dogs and looked at the domestic dog litter, there's always the one that's more reserved, and there's one that comes to the front and says, pick me, you know. And they've all painted dogs, you've got exactly the same. You've got the alphas, the merging alphas, you've got the betas, and then you've got the ones that are just, we do our own thing, you tell me what to do, and I'm happy to do it, and those are the gammas. So this is where I'm going to lead into the social system of the painted dog, because these pups, as they're growing up, when they have to get to explore, they'll suddenly notice there'll be one male and probably one female that when they come up against a new stimulus like a tortoise or even something dangerous like a cobra, it'll be the emerging alpha, the young pup that's got enough savvy sense to look at that and go, pups, that's dangerous, or pups, we can play with that, let's have some fun. And very quickly, the young males and the young females start to say, that dog is going to be our, when he says, let's leave and form a new pack, which they do at about the age of 2 years old, they already know who they're going to follow. So there's no fighting for leadership. They're also amazingly the only species that we know where there's no in-house fighting. You know, we all know as human beings we have squabbles, but they don't. They do it by a greeting ceremony that I'm hoping we're going to be able to share somewhere down later in the presentation. Basically, what painted dogs do is every dog every day greets every other dog. A bit like in the morning, if we get out of bed and we say, good morning, how are you, to people that we care about and people we interact with, the more likelihood is that when we mess up later in the day, someone's going to say, that's all right, Greg. You were good enough in the morning to say, ask about my well-being. And if you need my help now, of course, you're going to have it.
Hey, Doc, I think they're wanting to ask a couple questions, it sounds like. Josh, did I hear you have some questions coming in?
Yeah, so one question, you said that they left, you said that they actually left to create a new pack. Do they ever come back or join if they see each other? Is that something
No,
they do?
once they, so when the
Anyone else have
females get
questions?
between 18 months and 2 years old, they decide it's time to form a new pack. So the females will leave first, and they play safe. They stay close to their natal territory, waiting for males to somehow hopefully appear from nowhere. Which amazingly, and the males leave about 1 year later. And the males, basically, when they disperse, as we say, they're almost like pioneers. They just head east or head north. They keep going one single direction unless they meet an obstacle like a city that they have to go around. And so when the male finally, if they're lucky, finally bump into females. And then basically the emerging female, the new alpha female of the female, the lead female, and the females together decided as a collective whether they even like the guys or not. And I had a wonderful case where I studied my first two dispersing, and there were two females, actually it was Circus and Olner's sisters, and they dispersed, and I'm fascinated, and they found two other dogs, one they called Cross and Anvil, Cup and Anvil, I call them, after the bones in the ear, that markings that look like it. And so I was studying them as a young biologist, and of course you never know what you're looking for. You just record absolutely everything. And this is, if you ever, any of you ever become a field biologist, record absolutely, you don't know what you're looking for, just record everything you think you're seeing. So power of observation is very important to be a field biologist. And I couldn't see any signs of bonding. I was measuring how close they were sleeping together and anything what their activity, how they were greeting each other. And then these two females, Neck and Cross, suddenly the next day there was another two males. And I'm like, what's going on here? Two bigger males come and kick the guys out in the middle of the night, and I wasn't there to see it happen. They hung out for another 10 days, and I was just writing in my notebook that I thought that my data was showing that the Neck was bonding with one of the males, who I called Bobtail because he had no tail whatsoever. obviously chewed off in the scourge with the hyena, probably when he was a pup. And a survivor, clearly. And the next morning she was gone. She was with three males, and then I didn't know, did she prefer three males, or did three males come in the middle of the night and do a takeover? And then about 2 weeks later, I was lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time when the two females stood up and they looked at the males, and there was no greeting ceremony, which is amazing to see. And then they just took off. It's like they signaled to the male, a silent signal that we're leaving, we're going somewhere. And I'm like, where are you going now, missus? So I followed them all through the 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I tracked them using a radio collar all the way until 3 o'clock in the morning. They finally settled somewhere about 25 to 30 miles away. And I'm like, I'm going to get some sleep. 2 hours sleep I got. The dogs woke up and I heard a greeting ceremony, and I'm like, that's more than 2 dogs there. So as the light came up, sure enough, they were with 2 other males, but it wasn't 2 different males. They had gone in the middle of the night and found the 2 males that they preferred. It was ragtag and bobtail. And it turned out that what I realized later, that the females weren't choosing for his physical stature. And it wasn't the males that were choosing and taking over. The females were choosing for smarts. The dogs that had the ability to help carry them through and their pups to the next generation.
That's absolutely fascinating. Josh, some more questions coming in. I know we only have, 10 minutes of class time left?
And
Yeah,
we got more
we
than
got-
10 minutes. Come on, we can have more.
Okay.
The next class not important, I'm told.
Yeah. Well, we'll be sure to pass that on to them. We got a question over here. Can you read it? Let's double check we can hear, but yes.
Can you read the question?
Are they a threat to humans is the question.
Oh, yeah. Are they a threat to humans? Well, of course, when I first started working with the painted dog, that was another question we didn't know the truth about. And in fact, I used to talk to ranchers and say, oh, they're dangerous for people because they were justifying the slaughter. And there'd be a rancher, who probably couldn't climb any tree. Some big burly guy who couldn't run or climb for love nor money. And they'd say, I just didn't manage to climb the tree and escape. Well, interestingly, I had an early encounter with painted dogs when I was waking up first thing in the morning and I needed to go to the bathroom, and which of course in the bushes, anywhere. And I got to the point where I had my trousers down by my ankles, and the whole pack I was studying appeared. You can't run away in that position. My mother already was concerned because in those days they were deliberately called wild dogs to justify their slaughter. And it came closer to the point where I could almost touch them, but I couldn't run away. I think I added a bit to my pile, and then they just walked. The smell drove them away, maybe. But the fact is, in the wild, there has been no record of a painted dog ever attacking human beings. Now, of course, was a very important fact to know. And of course, if we're worried about dying from anything, we should be more worried about motor vehicles, which was part of this presentation, but I'm probably not going to get a chance to share it. There has been no record of them ever attacking people. Any other questions we can throw in there?
Yeah, we have one coming right now. Okay, so remind us how long you've been studying the dogs, and then kind of what sparked this interest to study these dogs?
Okay, well, 38 years is the easy question. I've been studying painted dogs. What sparked me to work with painted dogs? When I first started working with painted dogs, I was actually working with reptiles before that. So it was almost like going out of the fact that everyone hated snakes and still do, sadly. And I was asked to help for 6 months on a research project to collect field data. And I said, oh, yeah, I was asked to do it full time. I said, I'll help you for 6 months. And 38 years later, that project failed and I carried on doing the dogs. I think what it was that suddenly I realized, knowing full well that we had a species that was heavily persecuted, I remember thinking this species needed help. And, you know, I'm a passionate conservationist and I felt I could make some difference. And then, of course, I realized with the circus incident, the dog looking after his brother and the sick and the weak, I'm like, nothing true about what's written about these dogs. You know, so here's a species that's maligned as vermin, when in reality we've got a system species that's got the most intricate social system and is deserving of our help. And it helped. And in fact, my first study pack was wiped out by the ranchers. There were 24 dogs and 20 were shot and the other 4 just died. And I realized the dog needed each other. And I actually realized that I probably needed them because I found a passion inside me that, but then I never thought of doing anything else. I'm still at it.
Awesome. What a follow-up question with that is, what kind of impact or how has that changed over the 38 years? Maybe, you know, what are some achievements or what's the storyline around them now?
Well, the first 13 years, apart from getting to know the species, was working alongside carrots and sticks, basically, as I should call it at the time, working with the ranchers to try and change, because the shooting was killing 60% of all the painted dogs that were killed. Road traffic mortality in those days was killing about 25%. So, but most 90% was direct human killing. And so the achievement was that after 13 years of damn hard work, in the year 2000, we finally got a ceasefire from all the ranchers. It was a combination of some had already changed their mind. The ranchers, in fact, finally dobbed in a guy for shooting dogs. He got prosecuted. The prison center was in the cards, but he was allowed to change his mind. He was allowed to pay a big fine instead. So it was the perfect outcome. And the whole thing was that when I did a study in the ranch town, which was all these 13 years of work now, I mean, this is what it takes to make one conservation success of such a magnitude. And I studied the dogs and demonstrated not only to the dogs, but the general public, that the painted dogs were responsible for 1.7% of the ranchers' losses. And actually, plastic bags killed 17% of their losses. Rubbish, cattle swallowing, one silly cow swallowed a shoe. So the upshot of that was that since year 2000, and this has happened in no country in the world for a medium-sized predator, the last painted dog was shot. No more dogs have been shot in Zimbabwe since the year 2000, and it's not going to start again. So that was one of the biggest success wins. When I started, there were less than 200 painted dogs in the whole country. Now there's probably about 750. They have a positive opinion, and that's the problem with den disturbance. People love dogs so much, tour operators are capitalizing on taking people to see painted dogs. And now it's the tourists, the tour operators, the film crews, and some researchers are basically loving the dogs to death. You know, because the pups at dens that are visited by tourists on a regular basis don't get enough food. The adults aren't able to give enough personal care, enough babysitters. When people come, they melt into the moonlight.
Gotcha.
And into the disappear. And those pups as adults grow up with short legs. And also when the peoples are going to the den, we've now found out that it leaves lions and hyenas to go to the den. They follow the people and then they end up at the den. Oh, lunch. Any other questions?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Go ahead.
Is there another question in the pipeline?
Yeah, he's gonna.
Yeah. Sorry.
Wonderful.
So my question is, even though the project is successful, 750 dogs is still a pretty low number. And we have representatives here at Sedgwick County Zoo. I'm guessing there's some sort of breeding program that's happening in conjunction with your research. What is your goal? Like, what would be a good stable number for this species?
Well, in Africa, the numbers are about 4,500 to 6,000. So Africa wide. We've got to remember Africa is, you can fit the USA twice into the territory of painted dogs in Africa. So it gives you some idea. We've got a long way to go. I mean, because the males do such great long distance dispersals, they go from country to country. And so genetic diversity, as long as the human impact, like in the middle, if there are wildlife corridors, that painted dogs can easily make it from one to the other in a heartbeat. I mean, I've documented males going 1,500 miles in order to set up another breeding unit. So, I mean, the prognosis is certainly a lot better than it was. We've got new challenges for painted dogs that are emerging. I mean, obviously, I was going to talk about it a lot, but road traffic accidents, wildlife and painted dogs being killed by cars is an absolute nightmare. And of course, you've got to imagine we had a pack that was 8, car hit 3, leaving 5, and the alpha female had just had pups about a month later. And had we not intervened, or they were all going to die. So, and then the other thing that's a big problem for painted dogs that we cannot control is climate change. You know, habitat loss is just from droughts globally, and certainly globally across Africa. Habitat is shrinking from over combination of climate change and human expansion. And that's probably the bigger threat than even the ranchers were. But the prognosis at the moment is certainly better than it was 38 years ago.
Okay, we got another question. You want to come up here and read it?
Yeah, the question about the sexual dimorphism. Are male painted dogs bigger in size than the females?
Nope. I mean, the beauty of painted dogs is that they're equal in all events. I mean, there's no difference between the males and the females, and the females are just as good at hunters as the males. And so there's absolutely no difference in size, weight. I mean, because they're all just as competent as looking after themselves. And there's obviously there's nothing else, nothing we can detect on coat patterns or anything else. So no, there's no difference. Group of 3 females can be just as effective as a group of 3 males. But as a team, the thing about a pack, like any group, isn't it? Some of 4 dogs is better than some of 6 dogs is better than some of 4, and so it goes up. Anything else on the sexual dimorphism?
Yes.
Yeah, we have another one. They're a little shy. They're intimidated by your beard.
I trimmed it before I came on tour, but that doesn't help very much.
Okay, what is the dog's prey and predators?
Okay, well, the prey is any small to medium sized to large antelope. I mean, two dogs would easily pull down a big kudu bull, but they will never take down a very large animal, even though they can do it unless there's enough members of the pack to eat it. So they're not like a load of us who put more food on the plate than we can manage. And that's partly because of their predators. You see, if they leave carcasses lying around, lions and hyenas will benefit from it. So you're just feeding the opposition, basically. So their main predator, but also it depends on habitat. I mean, painted dogs can successfully fight off lions and hyenas and chase them away as long as there's enough dogs in the pack. And in fact, I had the most amazing thing I witnessed many years ago was a moonlight situation by a den. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time when a pack of dogs, group of females passed by trying to signal to the pack that here we are, there's some guys, if you feel like leaving, we're around. And that caused a dog-to-dog interaction, which then meant that the lions and the hyenas in the area heard this. Before I knew it, I thought, oh my God, we're going to lose the whole pack because 5 hyenas appeared, 2 lions, 1 male, 1 female. And I'm like, this is it. This is the end for the pack. And all the dogs except one, which is the alpha female, she stayed down the den, came onto the road. And there was a lead male, and this showed me the role of the alphas. The alpha male stood on the road. He was 10, 11 years old. We called him old boy for obvious reason. And he stood there, and the pack huddled around him, almost, and there's like communication going on between them. And then suddenly they all burst off in one direction. And I'm like, you're going the wrong direction. The hyenas are behind me. And they knew that there was a third predator. There was a leopard there as well. So he instructed them to deal with the leopard. So 9 dogs bailed off. The leopard's up a tree in a heartbeat. They came back and they did exactly the same thing again. And I'm like, now what are you going to do? And then they went, this time, in my mind, they went the right way. Of course, they knew where they were going from the get-go. And then so the 5 hyenas were routed in seconds. And then they came back and they had to deal with the tricky one, which of course is a big male lion, is quite severe. And this time the alpha male didn't just stand there. He led the charge because he was like, now it's my turn to do what I've done my bit instructing everybody. And they formed a V phalanx. And old boy was right at the tip of the V. But on his right flank was another dog called Circus, this amazing dog that I could write book after book about. And Circus was right beside him, almost like his 2 eyes teeth, like the emerging alpha. And he took the lion on head on. And at some point, when the lion was almost like just about to charge, Circus peeled off, went round the back of the male lion and bit him in the testicles. That did it. Male disappeared. So it's incredible, and that's teamwork. And you can imagine how that incredible teamwork, if a car kills 1 or 2 dogs, then the whole thing falls like a pack of cards. So mainly lions and hyenas are the biggest natural enemies occasionally. And the problem is lions, hyenas, and honey badgers all have to try and see if they can get some bar snacks at the den or kill dogs or pups. And when tourists walk to dens, they leave a trail, and that trail is predators follow that trail. Then they smell dogs, and then of course you get these cases like I keep hearing this: lions are killing dogs at the den, and they moved den or they lost all the pups. And I'm like, yeah, well, I know why. And so this is one of the big damages being done by people. But the biggest threat to painted dogs is not the lions and the hyenas, it's cars and poachers. But mostly cars in my study area do more damage to painted dogs than lions, hyenas, climate change, or anything else.
Okay. We have any last questions?